Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Usually I'd say thanks for joining us here on 91.1 FM or WCYT.org, but I can't be so specific anymore because Down to the Wire is now all over the place, including on Spotify and on YouTube. Anyways, I'm your host, Brayden Carroll, joined by Anthony Gery and our guest, Zone 6's Kyle Detweiler, filling in for Chris Kohrman. I'd say same time, same place too, but I totally forgot we have access no longer to the studio on Friday, so we have a show here on Turn Up Tuesday instead. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty great. How are you, Brayden?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty interesting Elite Eight last night for both the men's and the women's. Pretty exciting. We have more games tonight.
Now, I had a set of mixed feelings last night. Started with joy, ended with sadness, although I'm still representing my team in the studio today.
I'm surprised you're wearing that shirt. You should have a bag over your head over there.
It was a record-breaking season. First time IU ever made it to the Sweet 16. First time to the Elite Eight. They just fell up short on the attempt to make it to the Final Four.
Hey, you know what? It'll be interesting to talk about that game and all the other games in the Elite Eight from both the men's and the women's tournament, along with some other here and there's around sports, plus our stooge of the week. And we're going to start off first with Oregon State Houston. It was the Blue Bloods versus the Bad Bloods. And I'll tell you this, for 30 of those 40 minutes, Oregon State, they had zero identity, absolutely none. And then all of the sudden, the Beavers bounced back, made it a 55-55 game, but that was with under 5 minutes left, and really after that, they could not capitalize down the stretch offensively, and Houston punched their ticket into the Final Four, 67-61 victory. How about them Cougars?
You know, it was the easiest road Houston has ever had to the Final Four. Anybody probably has ever had to the Final Four. I think for this game, we have to look more at Oregon State and just be like, wow, they made it this far versus they got their butts kicked last night. You know, it was more of, wow, a 12 seed made it to Elite Eight and was competing for the Final Four, and not so much as Houston won because they should have.
You know, like you said, you got to give some credit to Oregon State. First 12 seed to make the Elite Eight in a long time in this century. But at the end of the day, Houston, they're just such a good team. Oregon State, they couldn't match up against the defense. It was the same way with Syracuse. The games almost looked identical until the last 10 minutes where Oregon State, who is such a high-powered offense, so much momentum going into the game, doing such a good job of shooting the three ball, just got stopped by the Houston defense.
Okay, you need to relax over there with Houston. You know they played nothing but double-digit seeds this entire tournament. That's the first team in the history of the NCAA tournament to make it to the Final Four, having played nothing but double-digit seeds.
Listen, stop it right now. I'm not saying Houston, they had a pretty easy road. They played a 15, a 10, an 11, and a 12. But you can't discredit those teams just because they're a high seed. You can't discredit Houston's run. They played Syracuse, who we all agreed was one of the hottest teams in college basketball. Buddy Boeheim shooting lights out ball, and they stopped him. They did not let him get a single good look. He put up some wild shots, but he did not get a single good look. And that's because the Houston defense, they entered the tournament the number 2 defense in the country, and they're proving that they're the number 1 defense in the country.
Okay, but come on, Syracuse, you have to admit, they had the worst shooting night they have had all season long in that game. They had to play Cleveland State, they had to play Rutgers, which wasn't one of the premier teams in the Big Ten, and then they had to play Oregon State, who we can all admit, outside of really the tournament, they looked awful.
Yeah, but it's all about momentum. The tournament's all about momentum, and the teams with the momentum are the best teams. That's why Syracuse had such a good run. That's why Oregon State had such a good run. They both had a lot of momentum going into the tournament. They're beating the higher teams. They're beating the better teams. Then they are the better team. And Houston just bested all of them.
But momentum only gets you so far. You know, you have to eventually, like, your talent has to match up with that momentum for you to actually be a solid team and make it to the national championship and win the national championship. You can't just have momentum. It's like in 2018 when Loyola had that really good run, you know, at some point it caught up to them when they had to play a far superior Michigan team. It's just, it only lasts so long when you're way outmatched.
The ego over here mentioning Michigan. Come on.
I mean, but am I wrong?
You're not wrong, but yeah, of course you use that example. Still, I agree. Houston just, I don't know if they're that good because they haven't really played anybody. I will admit they definitely stopped Aaron Thompson because he was Oregon State's star player, and I think he was 1 of 7 at one point. He just looked terrible. His only points were coming from free throws for like maybe the first 30 minutes of that game. So yeah, they definitely had a good defensive game, but I mean, is that going to get you that far? Like, we've seen them struggle against teams like Memphis, who granted won the NIT, but still, I don't really trust this Houston team, even though you say they have a good defense, and I agree they do. I don't know if they're well-rounded enough to make it all the way.
They're going to play a Baylor team that has also a fantastic defense, and when they're hot, is the best shooting team in the country.
I'd calm down there. Baylor does not have that good of a defense.
It's good enough to make them the best team in the Big 12, which is good enough for a team that's not even in like the Power 5, a smaller conference that's, they haven't played anybody in forever, much less a solid, arguably top 3 Baylor team.
Hey, the Big 12, football, basketball, no defense. No defense at all. They're all offense.
You know what? I don't really know if you can say that after last night's game. We're going to talk about right now Arkansas Baylor. I mean, they came out, they were up 13-2 within 4 minutes of that game. Baylor was dominant. Arkansas, they looked absolutely terrible. It was all Baylor all game. They won 81-72. They're on to the Final Four now. I know a lot of people doubted Baylor, but that was a great game they just had. You seem to be doubting Baylor over there on old Mike 4, okay?
I'm not doubting Baylor at all. I'm only doubting their defense, but their offense can carry. They shot 53% from 3. Like, they don't need a defense. They can win games with just a high-powered offense.
But still,
they did get 15 turnovers out of Arkansas, but I think Baylor's offense is coming back to where it was before they got shut off because of COVID. They're looking like they're the best shooting team in the country again.
Yeah, Baylor, they look really good, and like he said, but after COVID, they really struggled. That's when they had that terrible game against Iowa State and then lost to Kansas, which was their first loss and so far only loss of the season. Baylor, they're looking really good right now. I don't know if Houston can step up to that challenge.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting matchup because, it's offense versus defense, probably the biggest offense versus defense story of the tournament. I think it's going to be a matchup to watch, and it's just going to come down to each team's weak side of the ball. Can Houston get points on offense, and can Baylor get stops on defense?
And, you talked about storied runs in the tournament. How about Arkansas? They had quite the run. I don't think really anybody thought they'd make it this far. Even as a 3 seed, they seemed like one of the more underrated squads, but they showed up. They came out, made it all the way to the Elite Eight. Are you surprised by how far they went?
I mean, I thought they were going to get bounced in the first round, in all honesty, but I think this team definitely had the capability to go this far. I feel like they could have they should have, but everybody was kind of thinking they were going to be, bounced early just because they have a team that can be upset easier. They don't have a super strong team anywhere. They're just well-rounded, and they're really athletic. So I think that is part of what got them this far, but not any farther, because they're not really good at anything. They're just athletic and well-rounded.
I think Arkansas, they didn't deserve to make it this far. They had a pretty easy run to the Elite Eight. They had a 14 seed, a 6 seed, and a 15 seed in their run to the Elite Eight, which I know I said earlier, you can't discredit the lower seeds, which you definitely can't. I'll say this, Arkansas got bailed out by the refs against Texas Tech. They got bailed out bad by the refs against Texas Tech. I was cheering for Arkansas, but I'm even going to admit it. They got bailed out. They didn't deserve to make it to the Sweet 16. And frankly, they didn't deserve to make it to the Elite Eight because Oral Roberts blew a 12-point lead.
Wait, how does that mean they don't deserve to make the Elite Eight if they came back down 12? What kind of stance is that, Anthony?
No, I'm saying they don't deserve to make the Elite Eight because they didn't deserve to make the Sweet 16. They didn't deserve to beat Texas Tech.
You realize that bad refs exist in every sport, nearly every single game. It was a bad game, but they're still a great team, and you can discredit them for the Colgate game having that been a cakewalk, but Colgate was a 14 seed who was top 10 in net. No matter how much you hate net, that's still a ranking system that they were top 10 in. I like this Arkansas team. I like what they were able to accomplish.
They didn't have much of a defense, though, which defense, you need that for the tournament. They had a high-powered offense. They played into that SEC offensive style that kept up the pace with Alabama and the SEC. But both teams, they struggled on defense. They struggled allowing big shots, and eventually you're not going to make it far enough. Alabama and Arkansas both fell short because they couldn't play defense.
You still got to credit them, though, because like Kyle said, a lot of people had them getting bounced in that first round, but they made it all the way this far. So give props to Arkansas. Now we're going to go to the women's side of the Elite Eight last night. UConn Baylor. Paige Buckers, ladies and gentlemen, 28 points on 22 shots, led UConn to the close 69-67 win over Baylor. I don't know about you guys, but Paige Buckets is the best women's basketball player I've seen for her age and experience level.
Yeah, I think she's going to bring a lot more light to women's basketball in the coming years. She's already got a lot of people like watching her play that have never even watched women's basketball before, and I think that's going to be really good for the sport.
And she's the best three-point shooter in women's basketball in a long time. Like, she can hit any shot on the court. Same with McDonald from Arizona, who I'm sure we'll talk about later. Those two girls, they can shoot the three ball so well on a level unlike any other player, team in all of women's basketball. And it's hard to beat a team when they have such a threat on the outside and also on the inside, because she can drive to the lane, she can make the layups, and she's also a huge threat defensively. Probably the best women's basketball player in a long, long time, maybe since Sue Bird.
And the most surprising fact is she is a freshman. You know, this isn't like men's basketball where you see these 5-star recruits go out their first year and ball out and then make the NBA. The whole system of gaining experience and building up your rating and your style of basketball is a lot different in women's basketball. But she is stepping up just like this in her first season, leading UConn to a 28-1 season. You have got to be impressed with not only how she's playing, but how she's leading in her first year.
She plays UConn style of basketball, and they've been able to build a good team around her just the entire season.
And I've got to ask, guys, that last shot that Baylor had to win the game down 68-67, 3 seconds, was that a foul or was it clean?
I mean, I think in that situation, you have to let them play to an extent. I think it was questionable either way. But I don't like the decision by Baylor to have to rely on the refs to get you to the free throw line to have a chance to win the game. I think it was a terrible look for the shot. I think they should have tried to get something more open, and then they wouldn't have to blame the refs in that type of game. I think they should have, had a much more open look or a much better shot, and Anthony does not seem to approve of that.
Timeout. All right. You should stop talking. That was a foul. That was a bad foul. Hand on the face, hand on the arm, hand on the shoulder. That was such a foul. The entire play call was to try to go for foul, and they got it. But it was a no call. And of course, they're going to hand it to their best player, their best driver to the basket to try to get the and one. But that was such a foul. The ball didn't even get close to the hoop because of how much of a foul that was. There's no way that the refs are going to be able to adapt from this. If they don't get fired, there's something wrong.
But why not try to get an open shot and then not have to win the game at the free throw line and not have to worry about the refs? Because you always know in those situations they're going to make or break you. Why worry about that and not just get an open look?
Well, let's talk about Baylor's scenario. Their best player injured, hamstring injury, out for the game, probably the rest of the tournament in the fourth quarter. Allows UConn to go on a 19-0 run, but then they bounce back. You don't have your best shooter in the game for the last shot. Who are you going to give it to? You're only down one. Instead of taking a mid-range jumper, risky, without your best shooter, you're going to drive to the basket, and you're trying to go for a foul because you're only down one. You only need to make one free throw to tie the game and force overtime. It was the right play call, and it worked perfectly. The rest, they just bailed.
I think that you let him play. I'm going to side with Kyle here. Just in this situation, if it's not blatant the first time, I get it with review. You can look at it and say, oh, that's a foul. But if it's not blatant the first time you look at it, I think you just let him play. I mean, why make that 50-50 call when you don't know for certain if it's a foul when everything is on the line?
When you say don't know for certain, there's a ref standing right there, seeing 2 arms, 3 arms going right into this girl as she's shooting the basket.
Tight defense.
It's a
tight
foul.
defense,
but
Anthony.
all in game
It's a
speed, it's a lot
foul.
harder to see that. And you have to remember that, like, any shot can look like a foul from the right angle or can look clean from the right angle. and also in game speed and crunch time and to go to the Final Four. Mistakes get made, especially in game speed. I think they should not have gone for that type of shot.
We want to hear your guys' opinions at home. We'll post a Twitter poll after this show, whether you think it was clean or a foul. Go ahead and vote on that at DTTW Official. We'll post that possibly during this upcoming break. And let's move to the next game, Indiana, Arizona. Anthony, I know it hurts, but you have to talk about it. How are you feeling after that 66-53 L IU took that ended their season last night?
Game was close until the fourth quarter. It was a 2-point game going in the fourth. Just IU, they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't close out the game. And even with McDonald from Arizona getting injured halfway through the fourth quarter, being out for 2 minutes of play, they couldn't get anything going. The defense did their job. The offense could not do their job at all. 0 for 9 from 3 during the game. And no matter whether you're playing women's or men's basketball, you have to make threes to win. And that's just the truth. I mean, if you're not making threes, you're not making it to the Final Four. You're not making a championship run.
I mean, most of the time you don't even have to make a lot of threes, but not a single one the entire game. They should not have won that game. They did not deserve to win. If you cannot make a single three and you're shooting 36% from the field, you don't deserve to win the game.
Now we're going to go to our Stooge of the Week, where this one's a little bit personal, but it's the ESPN for only talking about the Pacers. This is ridiculous, guys. When Russ drops a 35-point, 21 assists, of course now you talk about the Pacers when they suck, when they lose. It's so annoying. Like us Pacers, hey ESPN, we really appreciate the 5 minutes you give us every single season. Roy Hibbert, he said it back in 2013 during the Eastern Conference Finals. The media does not watch the Pacers, okay? So why has Indiana been ignored so much since the dawn of time?
Because they're trash.
It's a really small market. They don't have a whole lot of history to them. It's just like the Charlotte Hornets before they had LaMelo. Nobody really paid much attention to them. It's not a huge market. They haven't really done a whole lot. It is what it is.
Are we just going to ignore the 90s and the 2000s with Reggie Miller, Jermaine O'Neal?
No finals.
We're just going to ignore that. They made the finals.
By Mike.
They lost to the Lakers,
No
but
rings.
they made the finals. No rings. Yeah, but there's some teams like that. We're not the only team out there with no rings. How about the Brooklyn Nets? Why do they get so much attention if they don't have rings?
Because they have 3 multi-time All-Stars on their team.
Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner,
James Harden,
Karis LeVert,
Kevin Durant.
None of them would even start on the Nets except for maybe 1 or 2 of them.
Let me ask you this, Brayden. What are the Pacers ranked in the Eastern Conference?
9th.
Okay, is that out of the playoffs?
Yes.
The
East is contentious.
What happened last time? What happened the last time the Pacers were in the playoffs?
They got swept.
They got swept in the first round to the Celtics.
Listen.
You can't say the Pacers deserve airtime when they're not going to show up.
Listen, the East is very contested, okay? If you check those seedings, I mean, everybody from 3 to 9 is like within 2 or 3 games of each other, okay? The East is close. All we need to do is win a few games and we're back up there.
But none of them would be anywhere like that in the West, which is
That's true.
Much better conference. They're like so many more better teams. They're less top heavy. It's just the East doesn't really matter except for like the top 2 teams.
And if the Pacers are so good with Sabonis on the team, why are they 9th out of those 3 to 9 teams? Why have they been 9th all season long?
Because Karis LeVert was hurt and Oladipo was not playing his best game before we traded him.
Mm-hmm.
Let me fix that answer for you. Because they don't have stars and they are not a good team. They don't have enough.
They're not a playoff team.
We need to go to a break, or else I'm going to argue about this for the next hour. We need to go to a break before I go crazy, so we're going to go ahead and take one. We'll be discussing the Sunday matchups actually, no, that's from last week. No, we're going to be talking about tomorrow's Elite 8. Sorry about that. You're listening to Down to the Wire 91.1 FM, WCYT.org. We'll be right back.